Okay, and I'm going to come to the final words of this video, which is, does it affect my relationships? Did growing up without a father, not having an image of him, not having his pictures up in the house, I still to this day struggle with the fear of abandonment in relationships because of him abandoning my mother and my sisters. And I was laying with my ex-boyfriend in the bed, and I asked him, I said, if you had made 3 kids, would you leave them? And I wrote it down. Where did I put? Yeah, I said, could you see yourself having kids and neglecting them? Fear of divorce, fear of falling out of love, fear of fatherless children, and being a sad single mom, and ending up alone and feeling unloved. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, it is Sunny Island here. That's Island with the Y, not the S. And I'm coming to you with a topic that I was a little bit hesitant to make. And I actually filmed it, but I filmed it months and months ago, but I actually got rid of it because I just wasn't ready to talk about it. But I've been going through a whole lot lately. I'm feeling stronger in myself, and I'm just ready to vent and speak the truth. So the topic of the video is growing up without a father. Does it affect my relationships? Does it affect my love relationships? Does it affect, the relationship I have with other men, sexually and romantically? Does it affect the relationship I have with women, sexually and romantically? Does it affect my relationships, period? So, let's get it. Let's go. I have a whole paper full of notes right here. And I'm just gonna talk from my heart. I had to write this all down because there's a kind of a lot of thoughts. But just bear with me. Bear with me. Bear with me. Yeah. Alright, I need to do this, y'all. I've been going through a lot lately. The first thing I wrote down was that growing up without a father. Let's start off with the story behind me growing up without a father. Okay, so it was just me, my mother, and my 2 sisters. And my father, I have not seen him since I was 3 years old. And I am 25 years old to this day. I turned 26 on April the 30th. Shout out to all the Tauruses out there. Gang, gang, gang. Taurus, gang. I forgot to put the Taurus part in there. That's important. That's real important. So I grew up without a father. I haven't seen him since I was 3, right? And I don't really have much memory of him. My last memory of him was he took us to the playground, me and my sisters. He took us to the playground and he brought us some toys. He came over to our house because he didn't live with us at the time. And I don't really remember what he was like. I don't really remember even how he looked. The only way that I know how he looked is because of pictures of him that my mom kept. So I know that he looks like my younger sister, right? Like I know that there's features that he has and he looks, when I look at his face, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's my big sister. And then other times I look at other pictures of him and his face, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's my little sister. And then there are times I look at his picture and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have his eyebrows. And I was actually named after him. My name is Sydney and his middle name is Sydney. So growing up, it was all like feminine energy in the household. It was me, my sisters, and my mom. Me, 2 sisters, mom, and just all feminine energy. I wasn't really close with like my uncles. I didn't really see my uncles that often. Like every now and then I would see my uncles and, like my male cousin, but very rarely. I didn't have any brothers, you know what I'm saying? I didn't have a lot of masculine energy in the household. There was no father figure. So what I wrote down about not having a father was that it made me curious about men and just how men operate mentally, emotionally, and sexually. It made me very curious about just men and how they think, and because I'm like, I used to kind of think it's toxic AF, but this is what happens when you don't really have an example in your life to like teach you what's up. So like, it's toxic, but I used to think that boys, I'm gonna say boys because I was a girl when I had this mindset. I'm a woman now, okay? But I had this mindset that boys didn't have feelings because I thought that girls were the emotional beings because I didn't have men in my life to show emotion. Because my dad, I just heard from my mom, as a kid, I heard that, he didn't seem to have much emotion or care when it came to his kids. You know what I'm saying? She called him on the phone and be like, hey, you can talk to your kids. And he just didn't really have a care. She gave him the number to call us and to be there, and he didn't really seem to have a care. And the whole thing with my older sister, you know, she was older, so she saw more, you know. She was 7 when he left, and I was 3. No, I was 3 or 4, and my younger sister was a year younger than me. And so she saw more, and she was very traumatized by his absence, because he was there and then he wasn't. And so she would ask my mom, like, didn't James used to be our father? Like, as a kid, like, she used to ask that to my mom. And I'm pretty sure that broke my mom's heart. I'm pretty sure that made her feel pretty bad. I can only imagine. And so she was distraught a little bit, you know, as a kid. And so the reason why I thought that males were emotionless was because, you know, my older sister said that she had this memory of talking to him on the phone, trying to explain to him, like, what happened to you, like, where'd you go? And she said that he seemed very nonchalant and careless, like he didn't really care. He was just like, you know, I'm still your father. Yeah, I gotta have that Baltimore accent. I'm still your father, you know, like, just real, like, yeah, I'm still daddy, but he wasn't acting like it, so how can I believe you? You know what I'm saying? And so that was that. So from that story, I just was like, okay, men, boys, y'all don't have feelings. Y'all just cold, robotic individuals. And of course, as I got older, I learned that that was not true. Okay, I have amazing males in my life now that show me that men are just as much emotional beings as women are. So don't think like that. That's toxic, okay? Okay, so the next point that I wrote down is that I was seeking a father's love, and I didn't really know. So I lost my virginity when I was 21, and I made a video about that, how I lost my virginity pretty late. And I was okay with it up until a certain point. I felt really bad, you know, because I felt like, why am I so old, hence the word old, so old and still a virgin? And I'm like, 21 is not old, first of all. And second of all, there's nothing wrong with being a virgin. You're pure, you're untouched. It's a beautiful thing to be a virgin. And, you know, I've learned from that mindset. But at the time, I was upset about being a virgin. So I was like, I gotta lose my virginity. So I would just, like, really, like, I would just meet up with different guys and try to lose my virginity. It was so horrible. I would never recommend this to any female. But I was just like, I gotta lose my virginity, you know? And so I was just trying to lose it. And I've never shared this. This is something I'm pulling out of my soul right now, because this is something that I've had buried, and I've never really talked about this with really anybody. But I was seeking my father's love, and I didn't know it. I just thought that I wanted to lose my virginity. But I kept on bringing these guys into my space, my living space, and they would disrespect the hell out of me. And it was a time when I was a virgin, and I brought a guy into my dorm. Man, this is some real shit, because this is some, like, my mom knows that this happened, but she doesn't know the details of it. And no one knows the details of it except for really me. So this is something that I'm sharing with the world, because I feel like that y'all are gonna benefit from it. But I let this guy come into my dorm, and I was like, we was smoking weed, and that was just, us smoking weed was just the worst part about it, because it just made my brain weird, and I was too young and too confused to even be doing smoking weed and bringing strangers in. It was a whole mess. I've learned from my mistakes, okay? And he just completely disrespected me, and we got, like, sexual, you know, and it just was traumatic for me, because I felt like my space was being violated and I wasn't being respected, you know, when I was just like, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore, because I was a scared virgin. I didn't really know what I was doing, and I was also under the influence, and so I was just like, I don't want to do this anymore. All of a sudden, while we were, like, kissing and stuff, I was just like, I don't want to do this anymore. We were getting sexual, you know, our clothes were coming off, and I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore, because I don't even know you. You're a stranger. I didn't know him. And so I got scared, because, you know, when you smoke weed, you get paranoid, right? And so I got really paranoid, because I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I'm being intimate with this stranger, and my whole body, my whole mind just completely did a 360, and I was just terrified of this person who I was just now kissing. And it was just a really, really bizarre situation. And I, looking back on it, think that me not having a father and me not having that intimacy with a male, I didn't really know how to cope and how to deal with intimacy with men. You know what I'm saying? So it was just kind of like, who is this guy? What is this energy? I don't know what's happening. Because I guess part of it, like, filming this video, it makes me realize, like, how I actually thought about it, because I never really thought about it as like being so freaked out because masculine energy was so unfamiliar to me, because I didn't have any brothers, I didn't have a father, you know what I'm saying? So I freaked out, and he was just so disrespectful, and he was just like, because I told him I was like, I'm a virgin, and he was just like so disrespectful. He was just like, he kept trying to talk about sex, and he was just, the whole thing was just a mess, right? And when I told him, I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore, I'm a virgin, I'm not ready, I'm scared, and I started putting my clothes back on, in a frenzy and everything. And then he was just like, what are you, 9? Like, what are you, 9? You can't talk about sex? Like, I was just like, I don't want to talk about sex. Like, he was just being so verbally abusive, and I had so, like, my self-esteem was just so low that I didn't think that I like deserved better. So I just kind of let him disrespect me in my own freaking college dorm, y'all. Don't ever do this, ladies. Don't ever do this. If a man is disrespectful to you, it doesn't matter what he got going on, he needs to go. And so he had this whole sob story of like, when I did finally decide that I wanted him out, I was like, you need to go. And he was like, he had this whole sob story about, and mind you, y'all, this all does play into the topic of the video. He had this whole sob story about, oh, I don't have nowhere to go. I don't want to leave. And so I kind of bought into that sob story, and I was just like, okay, I'll just let this disrespectful ass man stay in my dorm. Just because he's scared. Okay, like, you disrespecting the life out of me right now. You should have thought about your ride before you came here and disrespected me completely in my space. And it was a different disrespect because I told him that I didn't want to be touched anymore, and he continued to touch me. And to me, that's when it's considered sexual assault. So I'm talking about this right now because I feel like I'm strong enough to talk about it and to handle it. But I was sexually assaulted by him, and I couldn't get him off of me. I couldn't just say, leave me alone, get off of me, I don't like this. I was scared. I was too scared to just stand up for myself. So I let him verbally abuse me and sexually assault me, a complete stranger, all in one night. One of the most traumatic nights of my life. But I'm better. I'm a lot stronger now, so it doesn't affect me nearly half as much as it did. Like, it affected me pretty heavily. But I still continue to try to, like, lose my virginity in these toxic ass ways, despite that traumatic event. So you would think that I would have learned, but I was just so immature, so naive, and so scared, and so insecure. So I feel as though, just me personally, other people may feel differently, you know, those who have grown up with a father and have a closer relationship with their father. I feel personally that if I would have had a healthy relationship with a man, I would have known what disrespect from a man looked like. I didn't know that it was disrespect. I thought I did something wrong. I thought, well, he's being disrespectful to me, I must be too much of a prude. It was like I was judging myself, like, you're too much of a prude, you are a big baby. And it's so whack. Like, it's just so whack to even think like that. And so I existed in this fear of, like, being violated and being touched inappropriately, and I had a lot of anxiety, but I also still had that desire for masculine energy and that desire for love from a man. So I would have these little, like, hookups, and it just was toxic, and it was traumatic for me because I was a virgin, and I was still scared of masculine energy, and I didn't recognize it as a fear of masculine energy. And in this moment, y'all, I didn't recognize it as a fear of masculine energy until I turned this camera on. That's crazy. Hallelujah, praise God, glory to God, okay? And so I can't even believe I just freaking, you know, I'm going through something. Like, my life is changing, my life is different. If I felt that I could vent about that particular situation on camera, because that happened when I was like I said, I was like 21. So it was super young. Like, I'm 25 now, so that happened like 4 years ago, and I kind of like kept the events and all the details of it inside for the past 4 years. So I'm finally getting to vent about it on camera. But I wrote down in my notes, seeking father's love, and ended up traumatized because I didn't really know, you know, what a father's love even looked like. So yeah, it was a whole mess. Ooh, okay. So on my notes it says, craving masculine energy to a point where it became painful in my heart. Yes, that was definitely a situation. So I was very lonely, you know, because I didn't have a boyfriend. I never had sex. I was off at school for the first time, so naive and so scared and fearful of the world. Fearful of the world. I was a nerd. Like, I was a goody two-shoes kid, and I was just scared of everything, right? So, of course, this whole thing, this is just the stuff that I experienced. It was just like I would say it was too much for the person that I was. Like, I was just a very sensitive person, you know? I'm still sensitive, but not as sensitive as I used to be. Okay? So I was very lonely, and I wanted to experience masculine energy. I wanted a man's touch so bad, and I wanted some type of intimacy with a man. I just would fantasize about just being close to a man and just seeing his face, and just seeing his face up close, because like I don't even know what it means to have intimacy with a father. I know what it feels like to have intimacy with a mother, when she holds you in her arms, and when you cry to her and stuff, and you give her hugs. Like, I know what it feels like to have intimacy with feminine energy, because I also have sisters, so I have had a lot of intimacy with feminine energy and with women. So the nurturing aspect was pretty clear to me. But even that was a little bit askewed, because I do feel like a father does have a certain nurturing aspect to him as well. I know that the woman is known to be a nurturer, but I feel like the man also, if he's a good father and he really cares about his kid, he's going to be nurturing too. So that's what I wanted, was nurturing energy from a man, nurturing energy from a father. And I used to fantasize about just being up close to a man and talking about personal things and laughing with him up close, and just, it was something about the closeness, because I just felt so distant from masculine energy and so distant from my father. Because like, I'm named after this freaking man. My first name is his middle name, and I don't even know him. All I know is that he was good at playing the guitar, and that's part of the reason why I have so much musical abilities, is because both of my parents, they used to make music together, right? They were musicians. My mom's an artist, she's a writer. I come from a family of very musical, very, talented, artistic type of people. I'm like, okay, that's what I know. Dad played the keyboard like, oh, he was so good at playing the keyboard. I heard some old recordings of him playing. He was a great keyboardist, and he was a great guitarist. That's all I really know. I know he had a slight sense of humor that, my mom would tell us stories about that are like, oh, that kind of reminded me of me a little bit, like the sarcasm of it, because I can be super fucking sarcastic being a guitarist. So I'm like, okay, maybe like I got some of my sarcasm from my dad. Okay, that's pretty much all I know. Who is this man? Who is this man? Who is this man that helped me to be me? Who is this man who I have his face? I have his freaking face. I have his eyebrows. I have some of his personality traits, some of his characteristics. Who knows? Maybe my voice sounded like his. I don't know. I don't really know what his voice sounds like. So, and I know this is very relatable to like so many women in the world. Too many women, honestly. Too many women don't know their fathers. It's rampant. And unfortunately, in the black community, it's even more rampant. Okay? I know that all races experience issues with parents. But it's something about the black community, because I would never forget my high school class with my teacher. It was all class full of only African American students, including myself. And my teacher, my African American teacher, asked me, she said, raise your hand if you don't know your father. And almost everybody in the class raised their hand. I literally think there was only like one or two people who didn't raise their hand. And I thought to myself, damn, really? I know it's not just a race thing. I know that a bad dad comes in all shades and colors. But what is it about the black community? So that moves me on to my next topic of the perspective that I had on black men because of my father, which it wasn't good. And I'm so glad that I got out of that mindset because it was very toxic. It was toxic to me. It was toxic to any black man who could want to be anything to me in my life. So what happened? I decided that I wasn't going to assume negative things about black men just because my father wasn't a good man and just because my father was absent. I had this fear that if I were to be with a black man, marry a black man, or be with a black man in a relationship, that he would abandon me because my father abandoned me. I just assumed that all black men were deadbeat and they abandoned their kids because of what I experienced and because of what I kept seeing all around me at my school. When I went to like an all black school, that's what I would see. A lot of people would just be like, I don't know my dad. And it was just like a rampant thing. And even that comedy movie, Scary Movie, it was a joke about it. When the two black siblings was arguing in the beginning of the movie, and then he said, your father, and she was like, I don't know him. It's funny, but it's sad, y'all. I'm laughing because it's a comedy movie and it's supposed to be funny, but it's really sad that this is like, it's so rampant and so popular to a point where y'all can put it in a movie and is relatable to like hundreds and thousands of people. It's sad. But I decided that I wasn't going to assume the worst from all black men because of that. You know, I just decided I'm not going to assume the worst. I'm going to decide that was just him. That was just him. It wasn't all the rest of black men, of course. That doesn't even make any sense. All black men are not going to abandon you. All black men are not going to be deadbeat. You know what I'm saying? There will be black men who will care for you and who will prove to you that was just your father. And that happened for a reason, to teach you something. So that you can manifest really good men into your life. I mean, profoundly good men. And once I let go of that toxic belief that, you know, black men are a certain way, which was very negative, and it caused me to stray away and just, you know, be more curious about other races and things like that. And so now that's kind of embedded in my personality, the curiosity about men of other races now. It's just embedded in my personality now. But I still love black men. Like, I love my black men in a way that I wasn't capable of when I was younger because of my trauma. You know, because of the trauma of abandonment, I wasn't able to fully love a black man in the way that black men deserve to be loved, to be honest. Because I have some really divine black men in my life. I know 3 black men I can name who I'm very close to, who I love, who have made a very positive impact on me. All because I decided to change my mindset. It was after I decided to change my mindset that God started sending me, and I started manifesting black men who were super spiritual and super intelligent and super loving. And I had a whole new perspective on black men because of these men that I manifested. And they would not have been able to come into my life had I not changed that negative mindset that I had about men based upon the trauma that my father inflicted on me and my family. There's a lot to be a single mother raising 3 kids by yourself, and I had resentment towards him for that. So maybe someday I'll meet him, and I'll talk to him, and I'll ask him. You know, maybe someday I'll ask him, be like, why were you not? How come it's been like what, 21 years I haven't seen you? Crazy, right? But you help create me? That's pretty sad. So because I saw my mother being a single mom, which I'm pretty sure so many people can relate to, because I never saw my mother being loved by a man, I didn't really know how a woman should be treated by a man. So that's why I tolerated that negativity from that guy who sexually assaulted me. And he wasn't the only one who violated me sexually. I allowed a couple of guys to violate me because I didn't know how a woman was supposed to be treated by a man. I sometimes felt that a woman was supposed to like please a man, and if he was disappointing you, you did something wrong, which is like that submissive, toxic shit. Like, let's look at the next bullet that I wrote. I wrote down that not having a father gave me a very, very strong desire to be with an older man. Okay, as y'all know, I have a huge crush on Michael Fassbender. Michael Fassbender, the actor, who is about 44, and I'm 25. And I've started this crush on him when I was 19, and the man was in his late 30s when I was 19 having a crush on him. Age never was a thing for me. I feel like I had this craving for an older man. I'm sorry. I just had a memory of a joke about it, but anyways. Because my sisters used to make fun of me for it. Well, one of my sisters, because I have 2 sisters, and my other sister also has crushes on older men, even older than me, like 80. We used to make fun of her for it, and then I would get made fun of because I always had crushes on older men, and like, you liking these old grandpas? And I'm still like that to this day. Like, I still have an attraction or a desire for an older man because of, you know, needing that daddy. So that's also a thing. I'm really glad that I'm making this video because I feel like it's going to help a lot of people at least have something to relate to as far as our daddy issues. So one thing I wrote down when I took notes on this topic was, did growing up without a father make me promiscuous, or did it make me a lesbian? Did it make me promiscuous in the sense of seeking masculine energy? I just wanted to write that down because that's something that's very common amongst females who didn't grow without their father. They typically become like strippers and things like that. I'm not going to say typically, but it happens a lot where women do things to get a lot of male attention. And a lot of times it turns into like for some reason it's sexual, where it's just like, I wonder why that is. Maybe because they feel like that's the only way they can get that masculine attention, probably. But like I said before, I was inviting a few guys into my energy space. It wasn't like a whole lot to the point where it was like, yeah, you a hoe, because I was a virgin. Like, how can you be a virgin and a hoe, you know? But during the time of being a virgin, I would invite guys around and stuff, and it was too many, I think, for the time span, if that makes sense. Like, I don't think that it was like enough to be considered a hoe, but it was like too many for the time span. Let's say it was like, okay, 2 guys back to back, and then there would be a long break, and then there'd be another guy, and you know what I mean? And it was just kind of like, it was a mess. And I don't do that anymore. I mean, I'm just not like that at all. Like, I'm very picky about who I, do the diddly do with. I'm very picky. I have very high standards now, which is something I didn't have at that time, because I didn't know what a man was supposed to be. I was just like, I'll just accept whatever. I'll just take whatever because I was desperate. But I ain't desperate no more. Love me or leave me. You know what I'm saying? Either you love me the way I deserve to be loved, or you got to get out, okay? So I would say that it didn't make me necessarily promiscuous, but it did make me curious to the point where it was like I was dealing with too much negative masculine energy just because I wanted it so bad. So that's my answer to that. Did it make me lesbian? Well, you all know that I am bisexual, and I wrote that down. Did it make me lesbian? Because a lot of people think, oh, she's a lesbian because she had a bad relationship with her dad, or she had a bad relationship with her mom, or something like that. And sometimes that is the case. And I always look at the relationship that I had with my parents as a way to try to understand my sexuality and why I'm bisexual. But the fact of the matter is that I believe I'm bisexual and attracted to women because I'm familiar with that energy, and that has been the energy that has taken care of me and has loved me unconditionally. And so it's a safety net. That female energy is a safety net for me because it's like it's familiar and I'm used to it being good to me more than being bad. But then there's the other aspect that's like super curious about men because I didn't have a father. So that's my explanation about that. That was a good explanation, girl. Give yourself a pat on the back for that. That was genius. Okay, and I'm going to come to the final words of this video, which is, does it affect my relationships? Did growing up without a father, not having an image of him, not having his pictures up in the house, not having a way to talk to him and speak to him and get to know who he was as a person in relation to me and my sisters, did it affect my relationships? Does it affect my relationships? Well, I wrote down that I still to this day struggle with the fear of abandonment in relationships because of him abandoning my mother and my sisters. He abandoned us. He could have been there, but he abandoned us and said, fuck it, I had better things to do. And so I remember this time when I was laying with my ex-boyfriend. This was several months ago, probably almost a year ago, just several months ago. It's about a year ago, almost a year ago. It's sometime in January of this year. And I was laying with my ex-boyfriend in the bed, and I asked him, I said, if you had made 3 kids, would you leave them? And I wrote it down. Where did I put? Yeah, I said, could you see yourself having kids and neglecting them? That was what I asked him. And he was like, no. He was like, no, I can't, And he was like, do you want to talk about it? Because he could tell that I was kind of sad about it. And I'm like, nah, son, I don't want to talk about this. Not right now. I didn't really have that type of connection with my ex-boyfriend to be able to even talk about that. But yeah, that was that. And I had a very toxic fucking moment in regards to this at a time when me and my ex-boyfriend had an argument because he failed to protect me one time when we were taking a walk out at night, and he damn near just ditched me because he was afraid. Yeah, like a coward. Let me just run away and ditch this girl because I'm scared at dark of the night in an unsafe environment. And I was very pissed. Very, very pissed. So I went off on him. And I was just like, just abandon me like my dad abandoned me. Just ditch me like my dad ditched me. And that was wrong. I shouldn't have put that on him. But he shouldn't have ditched me though. He shouldn't have ditched me like that. That's fucked up. Okay, you're a man. You're supposed to protect a woman, but he just ran off like a girl. He didn't necessarily run, but he was walking away from me. So anyways, I said that and I shouldn't have said it. That was wrong. I dumped that on him, and that wasn't his problem. But it definitely did open his eyes because he was like, yo, I have a younger sister, and if I would have ditched my sister, if something would have happened to my sister, and he started to come around and see what I was trying to say by saying that. And he felt really bad when I said that, and it wasn't his problem, and I should not have dumped that on him, but it also did open his eyes to how a man should be. I said, you need to man up. And he was like, you know what, you're right, I do need to man up. Because he realized how fucked up that was when he thought about his sister, his younger sister, who he loves. He's supposed to protect her. What else I got on these notes? Right, I have my fears of how it affects my relationships. Fear of divorce, fear of falling out of love, fear of fatherless children, and being a sad single mom, and ending up alone and feeling unloved. So those are all the things, all the fears that have been conjured up. Those are the fears that have been conjured up from me growing up without a father. Those are all the fears. And I'm working on letting go of that through meditation and through prayer. This video is getting pretty long, so I'm going to end it here. But I'll probably make a part 2, just, expounding on everything that I've talked about, and just probably have a different title for the video. But that's pretty much it. Those are my fears. I need to let go of those fears because you attract what you fear. Law of attraction, manifestation is very real. So yeah, you attract what you fear. So don't fear those things, because what really is the point? Just because you fear something, it's not going to prevent it from happening. So I think the biggest fear out of all of these is fear of fatherless children. Like, that's something I always think about. Like, I have to make sure that I mate. I have to make sure that I procreate with a truly good man who really cares about his kids, who cares about kids in general, because I just can't relive the history that has been running through my family for so long. Like, we got to break that generational curse of deadbeat fathers, And I tell myself that I was put here on this earth to break that curse and to stop that cycle of fathers that don't exist, an empty seat at the freaking dinner table. I'm going to make sure that I manifest a husband that doesn't have this trait of neglect. Yeah.